Kimberly.
Hey, Mayor. Are you going to the library function tonight?
Yes, I am. You?
No, I was had an appointment to go see Denny.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
No, I'm got the sign up for everything, VIP package and everything. Going large.
Nice. Well, I will tell Denny you said hello.
All right, good deal. Brandon, how are we looking here? It is 4 o'clock.
Yes, sir. If you're ready to go, we're ready to go.
I'll be ready. Everybody else ready? Beautiful. All righty. So, Brandon, it's pretty much your show. What we're here to do today is approve, modify, deny, object to whatever the modifications that we suggested last time we met about a week or so ago. Then we would, if we approve this, we would then circulate it accordingly in the community. So, Brandon, you want to walk us through the modifications?
Sure. Give me one moment. I will present my screen here and show you the draft, which went out to everyone. Just one moment. All right. Can everyone see the survey here? It says draft only.
Yes.
Super. Okay. So as we talked about last time, we've added a sort of preamble here. I don't know if you want me to read this to everyone, Mr. Mayor, or if you want to just assume everyone read it and open for comments on this.
I trust everybody had a chance to read it. What are any concerns with its verbiage? I don't. I think it's actually pretty good. And I think the graphics help. I think the graphics help, although, again, we started using the word parklets all the time, which we were going to go attached parklets, then versus there was we have now, which are, I mean, I guess what we have now we could call parklets, but I would rather have it called, attached seating or attached dining versus perpetuating the word parklet. My only comment.
I had an observation, if I could throw it out here. Okay, great. So, this good job. I think this really explains it very well. I like the third one, that bistro table seating idea. That seems to familiarize us with the idea of a non-permanent type of seating area. But what I would do is I'd recommend, or just kind of throw it out there, that in the preamble, that when we talk about bistro seating, we say it would consist of tables and chairs placed in the sidewalk area without permanent construction required. That next sentence, I would recommend striking that, because I think what I'm seeing is an attempt to do is to get feedback on, number one, against the building, that's going to be permanent. There's going to be a bump out. Number two, away from the building, that's going to be permanent. That's going to require a bump out. But on this bistro idea, as Bobby and Pepe brought up at a couple of meetings ago, that I'm seeing is that would be kind of the concept of, if you have room in front of your establishment, you can throw a couple of chairs, tables, as long as it doesn't intrude on the sidewalk area. So I would see number 3 illustration as drawing. If you could put the illustration up there, Brandon, on the third one. That I would recommend that you just draw a straight line across the sidewalk, so it shows 3 parking spaces, and maybe and maybe get rid of those 2 tables that are in the middle, so it doesn't look like it's going to create a crowded situation, to give folks the idea that this is not going to, like we said in the preamble, this is not going to require any permanent modifications. And obviously it's going to depend on, the physical constraints of the building, et cetera. To do this, they're going to have to be able to push it up far enough against the building so assuming that there's adequate space for pedestrian flow. So just some thoughts on that.
Well, let me ask the ad hoc members, Councilmember Richards and Mayor, was that the intention? I thought perhaps it was, because if you have that being the case, then there may be some restaurants who wouldn't even be able to do that because of the limits of the sidewalk.
Well, I think there's an ADA issue where you have to have the ability for wheelchairs to pass without being obstructed by the seating. So that, I think, was what you were trying to do there.
Yeah, I appreciate your comments, Tim, and yeah, Brandon, I think I mean I know that you're getting a lot of direction from a lot of people. I completely understand, but mine would probably align more with what Tim was saying. And if I could add to what Tim has just said, is put like a 5 feet, like it's got to be from that table, end of that table to the curb. There's got to be whatever the ADA requires, whether it's 4 feet or 5 feet or 3 feet, I don't know. But so if you remove those two tables, drew that straight line, and then depicted, in order to do this, there has to be 4 feet of pathway between the table and the curb. This is where, boy, it sure would be nice to have a pointer.
I understand exactly what you're saying, Councilmember. So these two would go away. This would be a straight line. You'd have like an arrow with a 4 feet or whatever. Basically, what you're saying is between the bistro tables and the curb, it must be an ADA compliant pathway.
Exactly.
Yeah. Exactly. Okay, so that was the intention then. So that there may be some restaurants, by just function of the width of their sidewalk, would be out of this bistro table program from the start. They'd have no option.
Yeah, that would, and those restaurants would kind of fall in line with the restaurants that, let's take a restaurant like Stationary, for example. Like they wouldn't have the ability to do it because it wouldn't be in front of their window. So some restaurants just, and this is just, I'm not saying that that's what I want. I'm not saying that's what it should be. I'm just saying that for this particular example, it lends itself to a restaurant throwing a couple of tables out when they're busy or in the evening or when it's called for in certain spots, but it wouldn't be a permanent deal. It would be much more less than permanent.
Okay, so still three options. So this first option, second option, and the third option is what we were just discussing. So it's still only three options, but this third option changes a little bit, not to have any sort of bump out for a sidewalk or anything like that.
And then Brandon, you'd have to, in the preamble, delete that next sentence after the bistro table seating that says, however, in some cases, sidewalk may still need to be bumped out to accommodate the seating, because we wouldn't be entertaining that.
Yeah, understood. And I'd want to add some language about the ADA compliant pathway.
Okay, great, thanks.
I guess I've got a couple of comments, Dave, if I might.
Of course.
Something we might consider is, do we want to add a place for the person to put their name and their email? So there's perhaps some type of communication back and forth would be the first point.
Yeah, Graham, that's a great point. I just want to reiterate. So this was just done in a Word document, so I have a place to actually work on it. This is going to be an online survey, so you'll need to input an email address and all that good stuff. So we'll have the ability to contact folks based on their survey results. But you're right on.
And then that leads to another point that the 3,600 or so voters in Carmel, not all of them have email or access to a computer or not. So are we going to try to get to those folks that don't have internet access and so forth?
That was a good question. I was going to ask the same thing, Graham.
We can certainly create a paper version of this that can be distributed to those that don't have email. I don't believe the effort is to walk door to door and hand this out to everyone. But we're gonna, like I said, we're gonna canvass, the farmers market, have it on our website, send out email blasts to contact lists we have, work with the chamber, work with other groups, with Carmel Residents Association. So we can make paper copies available to people, no doubt. And on those paper copies, we would, of course, put a line for, contact information. If they don't have email, they're not going to put their email address in, but a place for them to put their name and contact number, perhaps.
Brent, I wouldn't be opposed. I could just speak for myself, but I wouldn't be opposed to stand in front of the post office a couple of hours here and there. I didn't get a chance to do that this last election cycle, and I would be willing to. I'd be willing to do that, and perhaps somebody else would like to volunteer and do that. But I wouldn't want to come across as when I'm handing it out as being biased one way or the other. I think it's important to have an unbiased.
Well, it'd be better if it wasn't a policy person, maybe.
Yeah.
And I think to that point, Brandon, I mean, in all due respect, that, going door to door and putting the survey at people's doorstep, if they don't answer, I think there's probably service clubs or, kids in the community that could help us do that if we really want to get an accurate read of how people are feeling about this matter. That might be something to consider.
Yeah, I was also thinking, could you notice it in people's mailboxes? Just, hey, here's a survey and here's the link to it, or go to the website so that you don't have to print paper copies of it.
Yeah, I'll look to. I'm open to anything. Obviously, ultimately, I'm at the direction of the ad hoc committee, the mayor and council member Richards. Sorry, I got Poppy and Richards mixed up. Sorry, Councilmember Richards. So, however they want us to get it out there. If they would like us to go, drop it door to door, we can. Filling it in mailboxes is a good idea too. Like I said, we already intend on standing at the farmers market for a couple weeks worth, getting it on our website, using our email list, and partnering with folks like the chamber. So I guess I'll look to the ad hoc committee for direction on that, additional ways to get this out there.
Well, I don't think you can get too many about that. I'm not sure how you do it as long as you get it out there. I mean, I'm a multi-mass media kind of guy,
Like, I guess that leads to my next point that, and I don't know how to tactfully say this, but how are we going to, control, the response to this? So, this could get out of hand pretty quickly. And, you could use an example of someone making multiple copies of this and sending it to family members, cousins, friends, and everything else. And someone who would be in support of the parklets or the bistro style dining, and that could skew the survey.
Or conversely.
Pardon me?
That could go either way, Grant.
That's right. And that's exactly right.
Yes, I don't really have a problem with it. And I don't know, it's kind of hard to be open and transparent and go ahead and say, well, we want to make sure we don't get it out to too many people. I think that's the problem. And I don't really care. Like I said, I don't care how we get it out,
Yeah, the way, Graham, it's definitely, that's the challenge with any sort of public survey. You're right on. The way to control something like that is using technology. So if we wanted to say we're only going to do this as a web survey, then you limit it to one survey per email address. But given what you said earlier, we may not want to do that. So it's kind of like you can't have it both ways. Like, I think that's what the mayor's implying there. If we really want to make this as open as possible, that's just the risk we might run with this, unfortunately.
We'll just have to accept there's a margin of error. At some point, I don't think anybody's going to be that, feel that passionate where they would do that. And we'll leave a margin for error at the end.
I just raise it as a concern that, anyway,
I think it's
curious as to how anyone else might feel about it.
It's a valid concern, Graham, but I don't know how we can stop it from happening if we want to be, totally global on our launch of this.
Yeah.
I frankly don't take a whole lot of, when I get these surveys, I get them all the time, I don't take a whole lot of credibility to somebody from Kansas or New York City that's responding. I look at more locally. That's my kind of criteria? Is it how many local people and who were they? If I don't know, if it's something relative to Carmel zoning and we've asked a question that somebody from PG responds, I don't really take it very seriously.
Unless it's me, maybe, because I live in PG.
Exactly, Brandon. That's why I was kind of targeting you and Chip specifically.
That's right.
But we have no way of telling in the survey where the people are coming from.
There is actually a question of where you, like, who you're related to. What's that question, Brandon? I can't remember now.
It's the very first question.
It's the first one.
Yeah.
Yeah. Whether you're a resident, full-time, part-time, employee, business owner, other.
I mean, because it does say specifically Carmel-by-the-Sea on their non-resident of Carmel-by-the-Sea. So if they answer it honestly, which is informal surveys are relying on honest answers, that would at least give you an idea of where those are coming from.
I mean, I guess as I think about it, if, again, in all due respect, if we really want to do it correctly, we have the voter roll of all the voters in Carmel. We've got the property owner roll with the commercial property owners. We've got all the business license people that have businesses in town. And those are the folks that we should really be sending it to, don't you think?
The business.
Let's move past then the prologue and move into the question itself, which is basically question number one, Graham. I think. So are there concerns then with the accuracy of the actual prologue? Is there any more wordsmithing that needs to be done to that? And are we comfortable with the attachments that depict the three different types of dining? I'd like to say attached seating or attached dining versus attached parklet. That's my only edit there. Any other concerns? All right, then why don't we move on to the question that's pressing us now? And that is the actual category of the subscribers to the questionnaire. And so let's look at that. So Graham, what you're suggesting is we go ahead and limit to, we still have to ask the question regardless of whether we go to the Senate usually the voter rolls, the business rolls, or whatever.
Yeah. It's my point of view. I'm not sure how anyone else feels. We've got 25 people on this call, so I'd be curious as to if anyone else has a similar point of view or perspective.
Kim, I don't think the chat forum's a good one. I think if you want to participate, it'd be better if you just spoke up. So stick your hand up or speak up and we can continue and include you.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yep.
Oh, good. So there are ways of doing surveys that they're still anonymous, but they're identified as being within a group. And you can then control the number of surveys that come back just by having an identifier on it. So that kind of hybrid, because you want to give people the ability to offer anonymous responses, but also you don't want me sending it, the survey out to all of my friends in wine throughout the state and responding as if they're through. Not that I would ever do that, but responding as if they are residents of Carmel. So there are definitely ways, and I'm happy to work on the side with someone if it just takes a little more effort, but you can do that.
So I guess, I'm not trying to guide this conversation, but I'm trying to get somewhere, I guess. That is that if these questions are still relevant, even if we did go to Graham's method of circulating the petition or the questionnaire, because Graham, you're suggesting we go voter roll, business licenses, business owners, property owners, and residents. But even if you're not a voting member of the community, Bobby, what's the stats on that? I think there's like 3,100 residents and 2,100 registered voters or something like that.
Yeah, I can't remember exactly, and I didn't do any mailers, so Graham might be pretty well in touch with this because he did do a mailer, and so Graham, maybe how many.
I think it's about 3,600 and somewhere in that range, Dave and Bobby. So
How are you able to measure your response? I don't want the
I'm sorry,
ballot
you got
box to be
muffled.
it. Yeah.
You got muffled, Dave.
Huh?
I didn't hear that last thing you said.
I just said I didn't want the ballot box to be a measurement of mailer success.
Oh.
No, I'm being facetious.
Yeah.
Well, Mr. Mayor and Councilmember Richards, I guess from a planning perspective, because I have my planner hat on right now, I guess I would ask the question: is there a reason to exclude people who are not Carmel residents
Yes.
from the survey?
I don't think there's a reason to exclude anyone. I think that we want to include as many people as possible. We just want, one vote per person type thing.
Mm-hmm.
And so if somebody like Kim Stemler can help us and she has a way, then maybe we should hear that out, or maybe you and she can talk and she's willing to help.
Well, I guess that was my question, because it sounds like if we go with, using the voter roll or something, that's going to give us the people that are within the boundaries of Carmel. So I don't know if that would be used to target to only send it to them, or what would we be using that information for exactly?
They're just the residents of Carmel. And if you look at the preamble behind the dais, I mean, we're predominantly a residential community. So, we know that those folks are residents and they live in the city. They vote in the city.
Yeah, I think we really want this to reflect the desire of the residents, not the desire of the businesses. But as some of the people on this call, like Kenny Spilfogel brings up a good point, that there's a lot of new people in town. There's a lot of people that really do like these, there are a lot of older, residents that have been here a long time that like these. So it's really, I think that we wanted, and I've said this all along, this is probably the biggest change that's happened to Carmel since the Coastal Commission was developed. And so I think we really want to get the input from the residents, the voters, the people that live here and pay property taxes here.
So couldn't you cull the responses out based on each one of these brackets, Brandon?
Yeah. So
a certain number of hotel business owners, 25% said they like the idea. Residents, 22% of them said they like the idea. Something like that once it's been responded to.
Correct. So that's the idea behind this question, is that when we use, for the online survey at least, if we end up having to do some paper ones, those will have to be done by hand and just input it into the system. But when you use these survey sites, survey technologies, it allows you to set some parameters that you can do that filter. So I would be able to, once this is done, pick out how many in the hotel business owner, operator, non-resident category, and just pull out all their answers, or pull out their answers for one specific one. You can create graphs and charts and all that good stuff. So that's the whole reason behind this first question, is just be able to put people in buckets based on their answer.
Yeah.
So from like I said, from a planning perspective, when you're doing land use work, it's not only about the folks that live in a city or a certain area, but it's folks that also use that area. So my recommendation, I guess, would be maybe to try to also still be able to include folks from outside of Carmel as well, as long as we can identify them reliably.
Maybe we could do that. So we have sort of two methods, right? We have this mail out, that way we're sure that the residents of this community, they're going to have two options. They can do it by paper or they could do it by email. And then anybody that's outside of the community will have the ability to do it with the email, and using the system that Kim is speaking of, where it's pretty much one person per vote. We get the best of both worlds. The residents have an option. They can do email or paper. The people that aren't residents, well, they just have an email option.
And also, Brandon, team, if I can't remember on the Forest Theater survey if that included this, but there are ways to control this, i.e., you could have a required field that your email address is a required field, your zip code, etc. But I think what I hear Graham saying kind of is that probably no matter how clamped down we try to do this, how do we monitor it for everybody being honest? And I don't know what the answer to that is. I mean, we could put, like I said, again, more requirements in here to make sure that, we can validate some of the responses, and maybe just kind of understand that this is just one data point along our journey that, we're reaching out to get an opinion, and, we could do more of these later if we get more sophisticated, or other methods of input. But yeah.
Tim, I think sorry, Mr. Mayor.
I was just going to say, I think we all have a concern about stuffing the ballot box one way or the other. But I do think that you make a good point, Tim. This is just one step. There's an entire public process that'll go through the Planning Commission also, if this even gets wheels under it. So I think there's plenty of scrutiny. This is just a preliminary first blush at, kind of getting an overview of the entire user. So.
I think, Mr. Mayor, as I'm thinking this through, maybe one suggestion could be, because you can do most of the controlling if this is a majority online as an online survey, then you can validate there's only been one submission per email address. And then to address the concerns brought up about folks that don't have email addresses in the village, we could put a mailer into the mailboxes and say, there's a survey going around. If you don't have an email available where you can take this survey, let us know, and we can get you a paper copy, and we can help you fill that out. So I don't think it's going to be a lot of folks that are in that bucket nowadays, but we want to make sure we can get any of those folks that we can. So there are sort of two approaches, and we can, the paper ones are going to be a lot more easy to validate, because we'll essentially be hand delivering those ones. So maybe that's a way to do it. We can validate with the majority being an online survey where you have to have an email address, and the rest could be by request bringing or delivering a paper version of the survey.
Yeah. All right, I'm comfortable with that. Bobby, how do you feel?
Yeah, I'm comfortable with that. I think that you came up with a good solution. Just as long as, we just need to make sure that the residents absolutely have one, and as many other people as possible have one.
Yeah. Well, and hopefully, like I mentioned earlier, we can rely on our partners like CRA and the Chamber to reach out to their members as much as possible too, because you obviously, those groups have more contacts than we do in certain respects. So if it's a consolidated effort, I think we could really get around to the good majority of people around here.
And I think, picking up on Kim's idea, if she's willing to help out, Brandon, I think we should, tap into her expertise in terms of just helping us out there.
Sure. However I can serve you, Brandon. I got your back.
Thanks. Appreciate that. I know Ashley had some really good luck with her online survey for the Forest Theater. So I'd love to hear, Kim, what you've done in the past, and maybe there's a way to use both of those forces for good.
Yeah. Like Danny Levette always says, we have a pretty loud tom-tom system here.
All right, so moving on. We agree on how we're going to distribute it. It's sort of a work in process. The number of people, is anybody missing on this list of people that we should have put in a category or a compartment here? I couldn't think of anybody else.
Was business owner? I don't think business owner is in here. I don't know.
Retail business owner, restaurant business owner, hotel business owner. 3 different categories of ownership in the commercial sector.
And then other business owner, if you want to write it in.
I was thinking more like there's a retail and restaurant. I was somebody that owns a building, like the Rains, for example.
So like a commercial property owner?
Yeah, well, like the Rains, they don't own a restaurant, they don't own a business, but they own the building where both of those things are.
So we would call it like a commercial
property owner.
I was also thinking they could also click the box other if that's what they are. But you're right, Bobby, there's enough of them that makes sense.
I think Councilmember Richards, that's a great point, because I think that did actually come up at one of our most recent meetings. I think Mayor McLeod may have even brought that up. So thank you for mentioning that.
All right, so with that addition, then move on to the rating system here. We had some discussion at the last meeting whether we should just go 1, 2, or 3, or 1 to 5. We felt that 1 through 5 was pretty good, so that's why this is here. I believe, isn't that right, Brandon?
That's correct. For this one, for these types, this was 1 through 5. When you see later, we get to the impact one, we have the -5 to +5. So it's a little broader scale and allows us to make it a non-biased question. But for these ones, yeah, it was the 1 through 5 for how consistent you think it is.
Concerns with this?
No, I thought you did a fantastic job, Brandon. You broke it out to those 3 categories and made it really simple. I filled this out just like as if I was a resident, and it was very, I found it to be fairly simple to do.
Oh, good. Okay, thank you.
Question number 3. Brandon, your thoughts on this verbiage?
I tried to include, we talked about the example that I gave when I explained it to everyone, and the comment was made, we should just include that in the question, which I thought was a really good comment. So I added in the example. So hopefully this is pretty self-explanatory.
Yeah, seemed real straightforward.
Okay. Then number 4.
You have the word parklet in there just in case you want to note that.
Yeah, I'll go back through and do a word find for parklet.
Okay.
Blow them all up. Thank you. So, and just so you know, Mr. Mayor and Councilmember Richards, that was intentional. I put that in. I thought, there was some confusion about what we were talking about. I don't think anybody's confused about parklets, but you're right. I think it may lead to some confusion again about whether it's the temporary or the permanent. Although I tried to sprinkle permanent and in the future in here as much as I possibly could, where it's almost redundant. But yeah, I'll change parklet. I think that's a good idea. So for number 4, sidewalk seating, dining is allowed in the future. Should the city charge some sort of annual fee? This, again, seems pretty straightforward.
Straightforward.
Number 5, this was an add. This was a new question, one that came up from last time. Should a business be limited to the area directly in front of their establishment, i.e. store frontage only? Does that make sense the way it's written?
Very clear.
When I read that, I read it as versus in front of another business. In front of yours versus someone else's. Yeah, that's how I read it, but I don't know if you guys read it that way.
It's meant to mean extending past your store frontage. So yours plus someone else.
The store frontage only.
So then number 6, if sidewalk seating, dining is the future, should wine tasting rooms be allowed to apply for a permit?
Yeah, I think it's straightforward. I mean, these are really straightforward yes or no's.
Okay.
Exactly.
Sidewalk seating, dining is the future, should businesses with existing private outdoor spaces be allowed to apply for a permit? Yes or no? Get to another scale one here. How concerned people are with the program impacting parking. So again, this was another one of our 1 to 5 questions. And then number 9, this is the one that saw one of the biggest overhauls. And admittedly, it was, thank you, whoever pointed it out. I can't remember who it was, but pointed out that it was a bit of a biased question, the way it was written unintentionally, but the way it was worded. So I tried to make it so it was, the Switzerland of questions, where how do you think it will impact? Because both negative and positive impacts are still impacts. So how do you feel that each of these areas will be impacted in the village if a program is installed? So these are the areas I put in. I added some spaces for write-in categories, so people could put their own impact areas in it if they so chose.
There's the other areas of special concern is a good idea to have. And I wouldn't be surprised if somebody had more than one. So the 3 options for others is probably good, I think.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking too. Thanks.
Much better question.
Did anybody on this call have a...
Sorry, Bobby.
I was just saying, did anybody on this call have an other? Did they, when they read this, did they come up with an other? Like I came up with an other, and I don't know if it would really fit in this or not, because it's, yours is really succinct to parking, I think. But would it create any equity challenges for some restaurants versus other restaurants? Would some restaurants get much more outdoor seating and others not get so much? And would there be, like, would we as a community face a challenge with some bitterness or restaurant angst? And maybe Mary, maybe you could help me with that. Maybe it shouldn't go in that. I'm just overthinking it.
I think you were asking me, Councilman Richards, or Mayor Potter?
Anybody on the call? The call's wide open. As far as I'm concerned, this call's for everybody. And I mean, I'd love to hear if the mayor thinks that if that should even be in here, equity challenge, meaning is one restaurant going to get this a lot of outdoor seating and another restaurant's not going to get any outdoor seating? Well, we're going to have to negotiate those waters. It could be.
I hate to be so candid, but I would say that there's always the desire for one restaurant to do better than the other restaurants. That's just the nature of the beast. Yeah. So I think there's always merchant envy or business envy out there of other successes. But I mean, that's just a decision we're going to have to make at times, maybe on appeal or something to council. Struggle with it there.
Yeah.
I'd be interested to see what the others are that people come up with, if there are. Because I mean, there's certainly the ones that are here, like noise, for example, that's a big deal. The aesthetics of downtown, design and aesthetics is a big one. Public safety, pedestrian traffic flow, public safety that captures the concern about a vehicle careening out of control and taking out somebody having a glass of wine versus a pedestrian. So,
I see good. Melinda has her hand raised.
Melinda, I think you're muted.
Is that better? Can you hear me?
Yeah, you got it.
Okay.
Yep.
Sorry, it's my headphones. Stupid thing. I can just pass along what I've heard from our tenants, and that is a concern that you might hear, and that is that there's some favoritism towards restaurant business owners as opposed to retail business because the offer is for restaurants to expand onto the public walkways, but there's no equitable offer to retail people to put some of their wares on the sidewalk. So it's that kind of thing. I don't know how you would word it or if you'd want to word it in here, but it's just something that's coming up. It's like how many restaurants are there in Carmel compared to retail businesses, and don't retailers get equitable treatment and help and support because they're attracting tourists too.
I have heard the same thing as well.
Yeah, so that's my 2 cents. Thanks.
I think that's a good comment. Thank you.
Yeah, I'd like to speak to that just for a moment, and because I think that is a good comment, and it's a concern, and on so many of these meetings, the business roundtables that we have, we always consider the we try to take into consideration the retailers, but then as a business person or thinking about the community, if we didn't just take this as restaurants, but we looked at it as making our town more attractive for visitors, then inherently the retailers will benefit from having a town that features more comforts that the traveler wants. And it may not be outdoor dining, maybe it's a cleaner sidewalk or a better beach path or a picked up Mission Trails. But these things all add to our character. And that's, if we were to go through with this program, that's probably my biggest concern, is making sure that we're adding to the character that's going to bring the tourism, the sustainable tourist that makes people want to stay here for more than a day, and they want to stay here for 3 or 4 days. Because ultimately, in the back of my mind, the ultimate goal is to attract a visitor. Well, it's first off and foremost is to respect the residents. And then secondly, when it comes to our biggest industry, is to attract the visitor that is going to stay here for 3 or 4 nights. That's the visitor that we want. That's the visitor that's going to sustain us. And that's the visitor that's going to shop in these retail shops, and they're going to continuously go out to dinner. And if we provide this great restaurant structure, our mom, well, I'm sorry, I lost the word. But if we can create this great restaurant eating establishments, then we'll get more visitors, which will benefit everybody, the retailers. That's kind of how I'm looking at it.
So, Councilor Richards, maybe I would offer, and actually I'm going to steal this because Marnie Waffle is texting me ideas. She should just speak up and have them be her own good ideas, but I'm going to give her credit for it because I think it is a good one. Maybe what we're looking for is the term economic development or economic development equity, because that may be the line item here because we're trying to look for things that can have both negative and positive impacts for this question. So economic development, it could be both negatively or positively impact. And you throw the word equity in there. And so it's economic development equity or something along those lines. Maybe that's the line that we're looking for here.
Mm-hmm.
Well, maybe we ought to consider being a little more specific, Brandon. I think it's a good idea, but maybe we say, does this benefit retailers as one line item, and the other one art gallery owners, and then other businesses?
Well, it definitely could benefit like the hoteliers. If I was selling a hotel room, I can say that we have this wonderful outdoor dining experience. And so it makes it a little bit easier to sell a hotel room. But it's really important that our outdoor dining experience is perfect, is absolutely perfect. And there is no safety issue, and there is no parking issue. It's got to be perfect, and that way it'll attract that client.
Well, maybe I think, Graham, that's a really good point. And we just got a good comment from Jenny too about making sure that there's fair representation. I think we're just dancing around this equity question, which is so important. Is maybe having a line for each. So the question really reads, how would a program impact these following areas? So the areas could be retail shopping experience, restaurant dining experience, wine tasting experience. And so we put in the 3, 4, 5, however many we want to put in there, the different experiences and retail sectors that folks come to enjoy here in the village, and talk about how each one of those would be impacted as an area, either negatively or positively.
I don't know. That's a good suggestion.
The other one we might consider adding in there, I don't mean to interrupt you, Dave, is the residents. If sidewalk dining is allowed in the future, how do you think this program impacts the following areas in the city? And then, the residents or the residential district.
That's a good example. Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, so we're adding that as a question then.
I think what we can do is we can add it in to this question as new section. So it basically would look like like retail shopping. It's so hard to type when people are looking, even if it's online. Experience. So that would be one, and then you'd have the same sort of -5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Okay. Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
That's a good idea.
Add that in.
Same thing for the residents, Brandon?
Correct. Yeah, I think that's a good add, Graham. I think those are all those are areas, the residential experience, the retail shopping experience, all that is a good thing to add into this.
Pepe, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor. So just a comment about Bobby's question about if certain restaurants have larger spaces or not. But before I address that, let's all remember Brandon, is it 31 or 32 restaurants out of the 51 already have some sort of outdoor dining. So Bob, if you're a hotelier, you could sell that to your potential guests, even after parklets are gone, or when and if and ever parklets are gone. It was a wonderful outdoor dining experience we've always had here in Carmel. obviously when you were with the Cypress Inn. How better can you get than that as a quintessential Carmel experience of outdoor dining? But to your point about with restaurants, some would be upset about they don't have enough sidewalk space and they couldn't put 2, 4, or 6 tables outside. Well, it's really, I don't want to even say it's the luck of the draw, just that's the leash you signed up for.
I agree.
The restaurateurs that I talk with, we all understand that. Some are positioned better than others just because of the geography of the building. Our good friend Greg On at 7th and Dolores, should this type of program pass, he could wrap 2 tops all around that large, very large building. He could probably get a dozen or 22 tops around that building. Yet somebody like Mulligan's, who only has maybe 12 feet of linear space in front of their building, can maybe get 2 tops. So there's no real way to mitigate it. But I think that, just to put you at ease, I don't think there's really any angst among the restaurateurs. And if there were, they just have to understand, go rent a bigger building, I guess, if you want more space. So thanks, Bob.
I agree with you, Rich. I agree wholeheartedly. It's the piece of property you've gotten. You knew it came with some constraints and some capacity issues. You bought the real estate. It is what it is. I mean, the classic example in my mind is a place that always had outside dining opportunities, but it was never really fully enjoyed until the pandemic hit. And that's Anton and Michelle's. I mean, I love dining outside there. I mean, really. And yet he's had almost always inside dining. But now that you can sit outside, people realize it's a pretty cool experience. So, yeah, Brendan, I was just going back over the old old questionnaire. There's 2 here that we left out, I think, which is if sidewalk dining / seating is allowed, should there be a cap? And the other one is if sidewalk dining is allowed, should there be a cap placed at the total number of spaces per street / block? Those are 2 questions. I don't know. I couldn't find them in here. Maybe I'm wrong.
No, you're correct, Mr. Mayor. Those were intentionally struck after our last meeting, the group, because we kept getting stuck on how those should be written and what they meant. And so we opted to pull those out, sort of in the same vein of what Tim mentioned earlier. This is early on in the process. We can refine that later, but those were intentionally removed at the direction of this group last time.
Good. Okay, good. Thanks. Appreciate the refresher.
Can I digress just for a minute, Dave? And maybe it was in the preamble to this survey, but I think it might be important for people who are filling out the survey to recognize that we already have outdoor dining in 32 different restaurants in Carmel. And I might have lost everybody.
No, I agree.
I agree. I understand that. My point when I was talking about the hotel room was just simply to, as many things as I can put in my quiver when I'm trying to sell something, I'll take. And so that's all that was. I was just trying to, I understand that we have so many restaurants, great restaurants with outdoor dining.
I cut out there for a minute, so I don't know if you heard what my point, that there's already 31, 32 restaurants that have outdoor dining. Should that be part of the preamble or not?
Question.
To Graham's point, you also could inject that note into question 7, because if that specifically addresses if outdoor dining already exists, should it be allowed? So you could just quickly put in parentheses that info.
Good idea.
Good idea, man. Yeah.
And I think if you recall, I can't remember if it was last time or the time before, we staff actually gave a small presentation on this. There, I believe it's 31 is the number, but there is a pretty wide range. Some of them only have 2 outdoor seating spaces. Some of them have like 70. So it's a pretty wide range. It's not as broad brush as saying there are 31 that have the ability to seat a lot of people outside. So I can try to boil that down in a sentence or 2 here in the note to say, note there are 31 existing restaurants with some level of outdoor dining ranging from 2 seats to whatever the number was. I think it was 68 or something like that.
I think that specificity is important.
Okay, so then moving on here, since we are starting to run out of time, I hardly leave. We got the other. So the 10th is simply Any other thoughts you might have regarding possible sidewalk dining or seating? I wouldn't want to take that out. I think that could be really allows for some interesting input we wouldn't get normally. So with these wordsmithing changes that we've discussed, is everybody comfortable with having those put in form? We could circulate it just for kind of a non-meeting okay. And if unless there's any violent disagreement, we could go ahead and figure out when we're going to launch and when we'd want it back. I've seen heads going north-south.
It sounds good to me, Mayor.
Beautiful,
Yeah.
thank you.
I think Brandon has some great, he's done a great job so far, and I think that these tweaks today will really help.
Well, Brandon, what are your thoughts then on a launch date and a return deadline?
Well, it's pretty minor, so I should be able to get this back out to everyone before the end of the week. So you want to, Mr. Mayor, you want it just to the sort of like the ad hoc mailing group, send out, this is a final draft, last call for comments, see if anything comes in, or do you just want it to go to you and Councilmember Richards? How would you like that?
Well, let's circulate it with everybody. I mean, I don't mind.
Okay. So then assuming we don't get any major changes, then, I'd want to spend a little bit of time figuring out our tech. Obviously, Kim's kind offered to partner with us at the city. Like I said, Ashley has had some really good success, over 500 people coming back on the survey of Forest Theater. So I want to make sure that we're doing something similar to that, but then seeing how we might be able to partner with Kim as well, since it sounds like she's got some experience on this. So I would think within probably a week or so, we could probably put together something to get out. I guess the question I would have for the group, maybe because this might be the last time we get a chance to really talk before, would be, how long do we think a survey like this should be circulated? Is it a month? Is it 2 weeks? Is it longer or shorter?
Do you have your hand up, Rich?
Yes, I do, Mr. Mayor. I'm sorry. Just one final thought before we finish up with Brandon's question. One thing I just realized that's not listed, talking about restaurants, we're not talking at all about the inclusion potentially of coffee shops. I hate to see that come up at the 11th hour like it did last time. Like I said last ad hoc meeting, I probably wouldn't do it at Carmel Bakery. I have no space, but maybe the other coffee shops and bakeries might be interested to know if they were included or not. Maybe it doesn't need to be in the survey, but I really don't want the council to forget that, earlier on in the conversation. Thank you.
Well, you're right. It was kind of overlooked then during the original discussion of outdoor dining opportunities anyway. So what do we want to do? Do we want to have something specific to coffee shops, or? Bobby?
I would like to see the coffee shops be treated as a restaurant personally. I think that, they sell food, they sell drinks. It's just a different time of day. And so I would just include them in. There's only, how many is there? Four specialty shops? And I would just, my personal hope would be to just add them in.
Yeah, they are, Councilmember Richards, they are a category of restaurants in our code already. They're called out as differently, so they're, as you put it, like a specialty restaurant, but they're technically a restaurant in our code. So they would fall under this survey the way it's written, because it's not excluding coffee shops.
Yeah.
So if we want to make that a round two thing, when we start talking about caps and really dialing down the specific types, we could do that.
But if we were to consider wine tasting rooms on this go around, we certainly should be adding coffee shops.
So should we add? We could just add a question that mirrors, take out the word wine tasting room and insert the word coffee shop.
Or
adding a question.
And coffee shops.
Yeah, correct. So we could do, just add in another one that just like this.
Maybe you need to say coffee shops / bakeries.
Well, whatever that category is, isn't it specialty?
I think it's specialty restaurants, but
people might not understand what that is.
Yeah, so we could do
I think maybe only 3 actually have access to sidewalk, though. I think there are 5, but anyway.
So something.
Future, there could be a future coffee shop that doesn't exist right now, so we would need to kind of know that.
So something like that. Adding a question, so it's the mirror of the wine tasting room, but it's for a specialty restaurant.
Yeah.
Example: coffee shops, bakeries.
But it doesn't caught in the no drinking crowd either, you know. It doesn't like.
I think that's a good addition, actually. Okay, well, I can definitely get this whipped back around before the end of the week. I might even be able to just get it back out tomorrow, depending on how my day goes.
All righty. Well, good. Then
so I think we come back to the issue. I don't mean to interrupt, Dave. The issue of timing. How long is this going to be out there for? Is it 2 weeks? Is it 4 weeks? What's the timing of it?
3 to 4.
Yeah, it seems like Jenny McMurdo or Amy, you guys probably have more experience with these things than most of us.
Can I speak?
And perhaps Kim as well.
Kim, yeah, you have a unique, you have a unique community. Generally, I don't make surveys that long, only a couple of weeks. But because you have a lot of second homeowners that you probably want to get their input, you probably want to make it a little longer because that could take some time. So I would say maybe a month. And I cringe at that, but really the goal is to get maximum input, right? Is that the goal? Or yep. To get it answered really quickly. And I know there's, again, I'm cringing inside saying this. So with a researcher's hat on, I would say because most people don't live there or a good number of people don't live there full time. I actually don't know the percentages. And you want to reach those that own property, right? Whether they live there or not. Is that so? Yeah. Okay. So then you probably need a couple more weeks, so a month. Amy, what do you think?
I agree with you, Kim.
Yeah, I'd agree. I mean, it is, and a lot of people, like you said, second homeowners, especially, that are pretty much a vital part of the community, but may not be that, forefront of their mind unless they're here. I agree. Yeah. So we'll do a month then, 4 weeks. Bobby, you good with that?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
So just as an idea, we might consider the month of May. You start at May 1st, you end May 31st. Yeah. That encompasses Memorial Day weekend when a lot of the second homeowners are, possibly going to be here, and we get the greatest likelihood of a response.
Yeah.
Good idea.
Well, we'll announce it. We can announce it at our May City Council meeting.
Yeah.
Get the pine cone to promote it. Wherever anybody is, they might be reading the pine cone.
It looks like Mr. Mayor. It looks like Marnie actually has her hand up.
Yeah.
I was thinking along those same lines. Are we going to put an ad in the pine cone for 4 weeks straight? Because that might help bring in the responses as well.
Yep. Good question. We want to do that? Yeah, why not? I mean, I'd rather err on the side of over-disclosure than under-disclosure.
Yep.
All right, well, I appreciate the direction. I would note that we now lost another great hospitality individual just 2 days ago. Pep, did you realize that Kajan had passed away? Chaba?
No, who did?
Chaba?
Yes, Chaba, exactly.
Oh,
Chaba Agent?
I'm so sorry.
Yep, exactly.
Oh, what a sweet man he was.
I just got a text from Kenny saying, I'm sorry to, I'm not sure if you heard the news, but Chaba Kajan passed away. He was literally, he just had his 79th birthday on April 3rd.
Wonderful guy.
Yeah, he was a legendary feature here in Carmel.
Tony, sweet family. Tony, you guys were really close. I'm so sorry to hear the news.
Actually, I was the one that sent you the text.
I know, I said that, yeah.
Yeah, but he passed away yesterday. He wasn't well for quite a while. He was on dialysis, but he passed away peacefully yesterday.
And for some of the, maybe for some of you that don't know who he is, he a legend restaurateur, but he's the one that started the Green Ribbon of Excellence. Is that right, Tony?
Absolutely, with the chamber, correct.
With the chamber, yeah.
Great guy.
Well, Tony, I thank you for letting me know. I mean, I really appreciate you sharing the news. It's so sad. There seemed to be kind of an abundance of passings recently. I hope that's not that. I hope that's the last one for a while.
I know, and also Brother Dunn, the principal of Palma, passed away today as well.
Yes.
Palma High School, Brother Dunn, Patrick Dunn, he passed away, 67 years old.
Oh.
So.
On that happy note, so let's get that damn survey out there while we're still with it.
So I'll have something to the group before the end of the week, and then assuming it's all good, then that'll give us plenty of time to set up our system and have it launched by May 1st.
All right, great. Thanks, guys. Appreciate the input. Should we huddle up again in the near future on anything? Well, we may, but I think we may get some direction for the next council meeting. Yeah. All right, great. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, everybody. Ciao.